I'm going to go make some money. I got into modeling when I was 13, you know, carried on until I was like 27, 26. And, you know, I made my little money. I made legal money. I made illegal money. You know what I'm saying? And I did what I did to get by. You know what I mean? And that's just it. That's just what I did.
All right. So see this time now. So you're at college. You're working. Are you still living with your mum, or have you moved out at this point?
Oh yeah, at college I was still with my mum. But I was in like a long-term childhood sweetheart type relationship as well.
Okay.
You know, so, you know, your boyfriend and then his mom's turfing you, you know, one of them teenage politics there, do you get me? So yeah, I mean, in terms of living, I've lived in so many different places. You know, I've lived all over Southeast London. And on occasion out of London, but at that time, yeah, I was more or less under the remit of my mum.
Okay. So trouble. So I sense that, you know, there was a time in your life where you weren't adverse to getting into trouble. Maybe you was around troublemakers. Maybe you were a ringleader in trouble. Who knows? I don't know. But without obviously incriminating yourself. but you know what I mean? Is that something that was an element of your history?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I've done things as a young person that if I had been caught, you know, I don't think we'd be having this conversation right now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I was fortunate enough that I didn't get caught, right? When I did get caught, it was at a protest and I was like 26 years old, I think, you know? But that was in my like mid-20s, and that was, you know, I was very much in control of what I was doing back then. I knew what I was doing and I knew why I was doing it. I attended a protest. It was because the tuition fee for uni had tripled. You know, prior to that, the government said they weren't going to trouble university tuition fees. They did exactly that. And I had planned to go and study that January.
Right.
So I went to a protest and, you know, was subsequently arrested. My modelling career had been really, really good. And I mean, really good. I had done London Fashion Week. I had been asked to go to represent the UK at Atlanta Fashion Week.
Wow.
You know, I was training models. I was organising portfolio shoots. I had my own self-contained business and it was doing very well. So when I got arrested, the Daily Mail got a hold of the story and just totally wrecked my career.
Wow.
And I had people calling for me to be hung. You know, I was arrested the following year. I went to court. I was pregnant. I was newly pregnant with my son. And, you know, there were 3 occasions where like stories were printed and they weren't accurate. They weren't true. Wow. And people were asking me like, why a 30, sorry, children have come in there. And people were saying things like, you know, she shouldn't have her baby. I hope her unborn child dies. Like people were saying like really bad things. And then like the clients that I had obviously distanced themselves because it would tarnish their own image to the public. So yeah, long story short, my modelling career was over as a result of that activity.
What was this all like newspapers and
my mum was on the way to work. At the time I was working at a school in Elephant and Castle called the Globe Academy.
Right.
And I was working as a chef there. And my mum and I weren't talking at this time. So anyway, this comes about. Mum's on her way to work on the DLR, opens the bloody Metro, and my face is like in the middle of the flipping paper.
Oh no.
And the way the media reported it, they reported it as pregnant woman a tax officer in a flurry of fists, right? So
Oh
they
wow.
framed it like I was pregnant at the time and that
Mm-hmm.
I attacked this police officer, right?
Wow.
Which was nonsense. I wasn't pregnant, and I didn't attack this police officer. I defended myself
Yeah.
against her. Do you feel me?
Mm-hmm.
And all of the evidence that would have proved that mysteriously went missing on the court day.
No way.
Swear down. Even the officer who claimed that I hurt her, like for the first sitting, she didn't even turn up. And all of her colleagues that would have backed her story,
Yeah.
they were all on holiday.
Trying not to
So
perjure themselves.
they stitched me up good and proper, you know. They stitched me up good and proper. But fortunately, it was my first offence. So you know, I got a blay and
Yeah.
I got fined. But I mean, I laugh now, right? But at the time, it was life changing.
No,
Like,
I hear you.
if this hadn't have happened, I wouldn't have gone to uni and I wouldn't have 2 degrees now. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it was a blessing, but it didn't feel that way.
Mm.
Yeah.
Wow. That's intense. That is
Yeah.
intense. That's intense.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's intense. Mm. So, so modeling was something that you sounds like it, especially at that time. I don't know about now, but I'm just saying, especially at that time, it sounded like that was a passion for you. That was something that you kind of, like how some people are like, I'm going to be a footballer, and they
Yeah.
do everything, and they get there, and something happens to kind of, I don't know, derail them from that
Yeah.
goal. At that time, you must have felt a level of, I don't know if disappointment's even the right word, but
Oh man.
being lost or
I was
being
heartbroken.
resentful. Yeah, heartbroken.
Yeah,
Yeah.
all of that, because at that time,
Mm,
when when I was sentenced and so on and so forth, I
mm.
was going through a lot of difficulty with my son's dad,
Okay.
and he was riding off the wave of this, right? So this was great for him,
Oh wow.
She's the crazy violent baby mother type, and it worked in his favor.
Mm-hmm.
So it was really difficult because I was not only having to deal with, the career that I'd built up and I'd worked really, really hard on, really
Mm,
hard, and then
mm.
like having it kind of just swept from underneath my feet like that,
Yeah.
whilst kind of having to deal with the kind of, politics that goes on in relationships and stuff. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it was hard. I'm not gonna lie, like it did. I had my heart set on modeling, not as a model, but as somebody in the industry that could
Yeah.
pull up more people like me. And it was happening. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It was
Yeah.
happening. I was training trans men to walk.
Oh.
You know what I'm saying? Like I was
Mm-hmm.
training men to walk like women and women to walk like men. And I was training people that had never walked in their life. Do you know what I mean? And
Mm-hmm.
then I was training people that were about to go and fly off to do like a Vogue shoot in Paris. Do you know what I mean? So like
Mm-hmm.
at that point in my life, I felt like, yeah, like I've put in a solid bit of work,
Mm-hmm.
about 10 years worth of work. I was choreographing fashion shows. I was up for a BAFTA award as best choreographer and fashion and model trainer, alongside the man that trained me to model. You know what I mean? So I was
Wow.
doing really well. So
Yeah.
yeah, it was a huge blow. Having said that, in the background of my modeling career, like I said, I had a solid retail management career.
Mm-hmm.
So I still had that to go back to,
Yeah.
so it wasn't completely lost. It just meant that I had to go back into an industry which had nowhere for me to go in it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Whereas modeling, you network, you meet people. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? You can
You
find
can.
yourself anywhere.
Yeah. You can
So
make things
yeah.
happen a bit. All right. Okay. So where I want to go next really is where did this I don't know, this political mind, this love of, I don't know, knowledge, sociology, philosophy. Like
Mm.
this is my, obviously we don't know each
I
other,
love
but
knowledge, man.
this
Chuks,
is
man, it's my
this is
thing.
that this is that thing. This is what I want to know. Where did you get that from? Do you think?
I can tell you the first instance of a political awareness that I had.
Yeah, please.
I remember it like it was yesterday. I
Mm.
was 9 years old.
Mhm.
Them times I think Linford Christie was the guy. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? He was
Yeah,
the
yeah.
guy on
Mhm.
track and field, right?
Mhm.
And we were watching, my mum and myself and my brother in the front room one evening watching TV. And I said to my mum, I'd watched the adverts, I'd watched, everything. And I said to my mum, why are there no black people on TV?
Mm.
And she said, I don't know. And I said, well, where can I find out? And she said, you have to read. And I was
Mhm.
like, okay. And then not long after that, at primary school, we learnt the I Have a Dream speech by Martin Luther King, right?
Okay.
And so I, being the very strange child I was,
Yeah.
after hearing it in assembly, I went to the teacher and asked if I could have a copy on tape to take home and listen to, because I
Mhm.
wanted to learn all the words, right?
Yeah.
So my kind of political, questioning the politics of things started from very, very young.
Mhm.
And it was encouraged. And I think the other thing that was an influence was my uncle Mark. He's my grandmother's youngest child,
Okay.
and he's the last of five.
Right.
And I spent a lot of time with him when I was young. And
Mhm.
in his room, he'd make me do all that foolishness, take my cup down to grandma, so she won't cuss me out and that. But
Yeah.
in his room, he had like the Malcolm X picture, the one where he's got the gun and he's looking
Yeah.
out of
Yeah.
the blind and that, right? He had
Mhm.
that. He had like a lot of pro-black kind of messages in his room.
Mhm.
And then like the music he listened to was very, very rebellious, but also very pro-black. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And he'd have books about, black nationalists like Garvey lying around. And I've even got his first book on Malcolm X, like one old school 1980s copy or something that's mad
Yeah.
colourful. But
Wow.
I kept it, right?
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think that was definitely, he was definitely an influence in my political awareness. That's where that came from.
Okay. So it's seems like he was kind of almost raised in that with the information accessible to you, and the
Mm, mm.
influential people around you maybe had enough, or the people around you had enough influence or respect from you for you to
Mm.
kind of, I don't know, delve into their interests, and that sparked your interest.
I think that's definitely it. And I think being a child who had no interest in speaking with children my age,
Hmm.
I was the child that wanted to talk with the adults. I'd sit in on big people conversation. I had no interest in playing chase around the garden. I want to listen to what you lot are saying.
Yeah.
So like my mum, her friends, when she'd have friends around, I'd be like in the conversation and you wouldn't even
Mm-hmm.
notice I was there, but I was there and I was listening.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes my mom would come home from like a shift at a club,
Yeah.
and she'd come home and she'd have her friend George, he, rest in peace, he's gone, but he was a good friend of hers. And
Mm.
he'd walk her home and, him and I would sit there and have like crazy political conversations.
Wow.
My godparents, one was French, one was Scottish. My
Right.
godfather's Scottish, he's passed away now. But but both of them when they were together,
Mm.
I remember them saying things to me like, Mackie, when you're older, don't vote Tory. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Don't vote for Thatcher. Like,
Yeah.
and I didn't know what the hell they were talking about, but I tell you what, I knew who Tony Blair was. I
Yeah.
knew
Yeah.
who
Yeah.
Margaret Thatcher was. Do you know
Yeah.
what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I knew these things because people talked politics around me
Uh-huh.
and I wanted them to. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think my inquisitive nature as a child and that kind of, and I think it is down to this kind of autism type stuff
Mm-hmm.
where autistic children either tend to go one way or the other. So they want to hang out with very young people or hang out with very old people. And I went that
Right.
direction.
Okay. That's
Yeah.
interesting. Mm. How do you, what are the differences between you as a parent and your mum as a parent? And then afterwards,
Okay.
what are the similarities? Where do you think
Okay.
you cross over?
difference is I don't beat my children. I don't hit my children. I don't think it's necessary. You know, I think that there are other ways to deal with that. And I think that beating of children and beating altogether is something that kind of echoes the kind of part of our history of enslavement, you know, and force and abuse and submission, you know what I mean, through violence. So because I feel like a lot of those traditions are rooted in that, it's something that I don't continue in my house.
That's interesting.
I try not to shout. My mum used to shout a lot out of frustration. I get it. I totally get it. As a mum of 2 children, I try not to shout. And I've actually looked into parenting, different types of parenting. Yeah. And often if you don't know that there are ways to parent, then you can't action those ways to parent. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, yeah. So I know about concerted cultivation and accomplishment of natural growth. So concerted cultivation is a parenting method that essentially says that when you provide children with extracurricular activities, additional classes, and you structure their lives around attainment of knowledge and growth with a very deliberate intention, the children tend to come out very well-rounded in that situation, right? And when I say well-rounded, what I mean is, you know, they have other hobbies and interests they pursue, right? They learn how to create social networks, and, you know, so let's say you go to karate, you learn how to socially interact, right? You learn that there are different rules in different contexts. So you have a broadened experience as a child, and that, in essence, that opens up the child to learn and want to learn other things. Now, with accomplishment of natural growth, that says that you allow a child to become whatever they're going to become, right? The problem with that is if a society tells a child that they're going to go to jail, and the parent isn't around to counteract that dominant belief, that hegemonic belief in society, then the child eventually grows into that mold. Do you know what I'm saying? Yeah. So because I know this, I've implemented this in my home. You know, and I think that's the difference.
What does that look like?
So in my home, that looks like my son being encouraged to do jujitsu, you know, encouraged to, he's into, what is it called again first? That jumping thing that you like? Parkour, that's it. So he wants to do parkour. So now he's 8, he can do it. So that's something that I'm going to get him into. He studies Mandarin at school. Like, my son can talk Mandarin, you know? Wow. So in my house, it looks like multi-talented children, you know, and children that want to learn, as opposed to children resisting learning because no one's gone over the learning with them, or no one's asked them what they're interested in learning, because he knows that he has to study at school, right? Yeah. But he also knows that there's room for him to look at the things that he wants to study outside of school. Okay. And when he chooses something, I encourage that. I might not understand it, but I encourage that.
So that looks like you almost invest in. Sounds to me, it looks like you invest in time in observing and talking to your children about what it is, and seeing what it is they like, and being supportive of that, almost to. I don't know if it's more than what you feel is necessary or a priority, but at least a comparable level of time and investment made in those things is what you're talking about. Is what, because obviously I haven't got no children yet, but when I do, it's like that's what I think about. How do I create? Because there's no motivation like self-motivation. You know, fear is a good motivator, and anger, and all these, and I don't know, wanting to please people. All these things are good motivators, but none of them compare to self-motivation. So
Right.
I do always wonder when I can almost smell a conversation about how to create self-motivation. So that's something that interests me. So it's very much about kind of creating that environment from
It
your
is.
standpoint.
It's
Yeah.
about leading by example. I mean, the whole time when I was doing my first degree, my son, when I started, it would have been what, 6, 5? How old are you? 8. Yeah, so you would have been what, 3 or 4 when I started my degree. Yeah. And a 30 saw me sitting up until, like, I'd be studying when he went to bed, and I'd still be up studying when he woke up. And he saw the sacrifices that I put, that I made to study, and he'd say, "Mom, let's go and do this," and I'd be like, "Baby, I can't, I gotta study. Baby, I can't, I gotta study." It was always the answer. And then he saw me graduate. And you see, that day that I graduated, it was filmed, right? And I look, when I hear the video back and I look back, in the background, all you can hear are 30, this boy with the biggest mouth, right? "That's my mom! That's my mummy!" Ah! And you could hear him like bursting into tears. Like, he's screaming, but he's crying, right? And at that point, he saw everything I'd worked for, right? He saw why I did it. He saw everything, right? He saw what hard work does and what you can achieve, yeah? And you see that feeling, like, even just thinking about it, it makes me emotional,
I can imagine.
right? It does. But even thinking, oh my, like, my son saw that, and that means if he could see me do it, he can see him doing it. Do you understand? And I think a lot of parents have expectations of their children that they have not themselves met in their own lives for themselves. So my thing is, you can't lay these expectations down on children unless they've seen you put that work in too, because then they're going to respect that work and be like, okay, I know I've got no excuse because I saw mummy do it pregnant. Do you know what I mean? I saw mummy write a dissertation whilst breastfeeding, which, by the way, I got a first for. Yeah, like, you know, he saw everything. So I just think that when it comes to parenting, you have to be the example. You have to be that person that says, okay, cool, I saw that this didn't work in my childhood. I saw that these parenting techniques were not beneficial to me, aside from creating fear and anxiety. So what am I going to do to change that? And, you know, when I reflect on my own experiences and what worked for me and what worked and how those things made me feel, you know, it made me think about, well, how do I make my children feel? Do you know what I mean? Do they know that I love them? Do they know that education is paramount in this? Like, do they know that? You know, and I can't expect them to know that unless they know that mummy sees it that way and daddy sees it that way. So that's where I'm at.
Yeah, that's big. I think that's important. It's about kind of almost creating the culture of your family.
Precisely.
You know? Yeah.
And not perpetuating those beliefs about, you know, black people can't survive in education. Do you know what I mean? Yes, we know that the faculty, all of them, are institutionally racist. We know that. The hospital, NHS, the police, the Black Report, we know that these places are racist. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't interrupt those spaces with our blackness and with who we are. You know what I'm saying? So my thing is, you know what, yeah? Yes, I thought school was pants. Do you know what I'm saying? Yes, I messed up at school, but you know what? I was wrong. Do you know what I'm saying? I was wrong.
Yeah.
But
you could have found a way to navigate through.
Well, I think it's attitudinal. I think that you can adopt the attitude that, okay, you're gonna have to work harder. Yes, you are. You're gonna have to prove. Yes, you are. All of the things that you were taught about being black and being at school are true. Let's not fuck around. Yeah, boys are excluded at how many times the rates of girls? Do you understand? We know Wagwan for that. But my thing is, okay, not to entertain respectability politics, but there are tools there that, away from that environment, you can use for your own benefit. You need to take that shit and make it work. You know what I'm saying?
I fully hear you.
That's where I'm at.
All right, listen. I'm so appreciative.
3%.
I'm so, yeah, don't worry, I'm out of here. I'm out of here. I'm
Yeah.
so appreciative. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
It
man.
has been amazing. There's so many nuggets. I'm going to enjoy editing this so much.
Oh
Um,
my God.
I'm going to find so many little nuggets.
Little sound bites and
Yeah,
little
loads of
gems
them,
and that.
loads of little gems,
Yeah.
exactly that. I really appreciate you taking the time, especially you got the little ones running around.
Yeah,
Um,
man. Cool.
so yeah, man, I really appreciate it. I'll talk to you soon and like the page so at least you know when the interview's coming out, innit?
Say no, I will. um, no, and like honestly, like thank you for like the invite. Like we could do this all flipping week. We could do a show a week. Do
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
facts.
Maybe we should think about coming up with like a list of discussions and stuff. But I know
Don't
there's
worry,
other
that's
people
already
you have
in
to
that's
interview.
nah, that's already in the pipeline. I've got
Listen,
somebody
the
that
thing's gonna shut off now. It's just told me
yeah,
30 seconds in it.
listen,
So
salute, love every time. I really appreciate you, man. Thank you so much. All right.
thank you.
Too
Soon
much
come.
information. Big up, love.
Whoa.